I got it into my head to be a little more specific about Paxton. Uh, and I'm gonna show you why in a minute, but I want you to listen to Gamel for a second. First of all, he points out that the ability to see and render truthful the appearance of things is the prime qualification of the Impressionist painter. And he says, and today, that's all of us now. In the 1970s, the disciplined thinking whereby an artist is enabled to analyze his visual impressions and the complex procedures required to render those impressions on canvas are things known only to a handful of painters, and imperfectly known at that. It's reasonable to suppose that when painters of a future generation seek to rediscover, as they will certainly wish to do, the lore which made 19th century painting possible, they will prize any information susceptible of facilitating their difficult task. To these searchers, Paxton's pictures, and especially the thinking and the methods which produced them, should be of outstanding interest, for they represent the summing up of a movement, which he understood with exceptional lucidity. That's Gamel speaking. I take the position that Gamel's wrong. I take the position that the movement we're talking about, the Impressionist movement, is far better understood via the Boston School than it is by Paxton. And I'm going to give you reasons to see that. Now, for you guys who are coming out of the blue, you think, oh no, we're going to talk about this little parochial school, Gamel and Paxton and the Boston School guys and blah blah blah. But in fact, it affects everything you're going to be doing, especially in your training, because you're trying to figure out what kind of painter to be. I've been arguing for some long time that you actually have to master the appearance of things, the methods associated with best practices to render the appearance of things. So if Gamel's right, the truthfully rendering the appearance of things is the prime qualification of the Impressionist painter. And again, Gamel means by Impressionist painter, he means anyone who paints with the idea of producing, finding his music in the truth in front of him and drawing it forth from that source. So let me show you a quote too. There's a couple quotes, and then I'll get out of the quote business. Okay, so to discard the working methods evolved by the Impressionist masters is to greatly reduce the scope of painting as an art. But the chief contribution, later on he says, but the chief contribution of 19th century painting was the renewed study of color. This again is Gamel. By the way, I'm quoting these things from his essay on Paxton. He wrote a short biography on Paxton that's really full of good painters' information, as you can see by looking at this thing. But here he's talking about discarding the working methods evolved by the Impressionist masters. Paxton isn't that guy. Paxton does not work impressionistically. He uses impressionist color. And you're going to see why. The reason, as you can see, as you follow here, is because the chief contribution of 19th century painting was the renewed study of color. What? Now, you can argue, yes, that finally they brought color back. But if you're talking about Impressionism, you're confusing two matters. The Impressionist methods is one thing. Color is another thing. And Gamel, and I think Paxton, and I think Lack, and that sort of world has taken the view that academic drawing can get glued on, or rather Impressionist color can get glued on to academic drawing and everything will come out okay. Even Ang says that's not true. In not so many words, talking about the larger problem of his kind of drawing and mixing it with color. He shakes his head at the possibility. So we really have to consider whether Paxton is that guy that you want to look to for best practices, at least if you understand the methods of the Impressionists, which are part and parcel of the evolution of the ideas, light, color, and drawing with those things, a fully incorporative method. So anyway, so then Stevenson says, talking about something else, in this case, of course, one means by nature the man's impression of the color effect of the whole field of vision about to be painted. Now you talk about the color effect of the whole field of vision, and you're talking Boston School. I'm going to show you that Paxton is typically sort of correct about the color relations, quite correct. But he doesn't operate from the idea of the color effect of the whole field of vision as, in a method that is designed to operate out of and purely for that benefit. He's still an object painter in the old school way of thinking. Now that's my argument, okay? and how it affects everything that we do is kind of cool. So here's Stevenson. No great man is separable from his technique. And the difference between two great men lies largely in a difference of technique. For technique is truly the language of the eye. Technique is as important to an art as the body to man. Both of them appear and act for two hidden, questionable partners, sentiment and soul. Technique, then, is the indivisible, organic body of a man's conceptions and cannot be rightly apprehended when studied in fragments. Do you see what I'm saying? Technique is art. It is as inseparable from art as features from facial expression, as body from soul in a world where force and matter seem inextricably entangled. So I'm going to just talk Paxton. We'll look at the ways we're talking about two different things, okay? Paxton and Gamble promoted the idea that somehow or other is the great academic drawing and the color glued together, the impressionist seeing of color glued together, that was the sum and substance of the greatest evolution. But when you listen to him talk about the Boston School and how great they are, the greatest impressionists since Velázquez, and you're talking about Tarbell and Benson, we know you are, and DeCamp premierly before you ever talk about Paxton. And now we also find out, and I'm going to show you, that the methods aren't the same. Then you have to reconsider this entire way of thinking, and it matters, okay? And I'm speaking to all you guys who think you're following the Gamble model. You're going to go out and get academic drawing, and you're going to color it up impressionistically. It's good luck with that. Okay, so let's look at pictures. Now here's Paxton. Paxton's got a beautiful line, a beautiful sense of form. Well, it's not to love. These are lovely drawings, red chalk drawings. He and Gamble, I guess, used to hang out and draw for some years as Gamble was trying to evolve his abilities in drawing. And so they drew figure together for some very long time. Now here's Ang. Now you're going to see something here. Now if you can just ignore the idea, the idealization involved in these, what do you see between these two methods? Well, they both are simply operating from outlines, right? Drawing is what happens between the contours. Drawing is the contours plus what happens between the contours. Well, let's go back. There it is. There's Paxton. Rather like, right? Okay, let's look at them together. Here's side by side. I am so sorry I can't make these stronger, so I hope you can see them well enough. But there's any number of Paxtons that look like they could have been Angs. And except for the idealization part, where Ang is constantly painting to a Greek ideal or some other aesthetic or pictorial or local ideal for a particular picture. But here you are, you're looking at this guy. Here's the outline into modeling. He uses basically front light most of the time. It's all the model, all typical of the model that Ang produced. That's the academic model. And here's a seated version, some seated individuals. The upper left one is Paxton, and the right two are Ang. And I know that I have a copy of a really nice Ang that looks just like that Paxton, and I couldn't find it online, so I was stuck. I don't have the book here. So now I'm going to show you something slightly different. So here's the bottom one here is Paxton again. The one on the upper left is Tarbell. Now this is mass drawing, so you could say that Paxton could have done that. I've seen very little by Paxton that I would call mass drawing. But the orientation of this kind of drawing, even though you see lines thrown around in various places that are still lines and not pure mass. And by the way, I believe this is a Tarbell. I've been told that this is a Tarbell. And it looks like it very likely is. But what you're seeing here is an incorporation of lost and found and line, some interesting incorporation. Now, what you're seeing with Paxton, on the other hand, is outlines of things like legs and then modeling. So that's the model of what we call the science of the optics, the modeling of the ball. So draw the outline and then model up find the shadow line, model up the form on the side, on one side, flatten the shadows on the other, do your job, and when you get done, you're all set, right? But that literally, again, is the Yang model. Now this above is Degas. Why am I showing Degas? I want to show you two things in this Degas. Look at that foot. Does that not look like impressionist thinking? Do you see this? He's just stuck to the line, is he? And back over here, look at this disappearing head, the reading edge, and the blowing away of a form into nothingness, into lostness. This is a different model, isn't it? This is the impressionist This is the Impressionist eye working here. Ang would never have done this and done lostness like this. Now, you can see that he's also a linear guy. Look at this beautiful, beautiful line. I mean, I really do think he may be the greatest draftsman when it comes to actually drawing what he sees. He calls himself an Impressionist in line. I think he's the greatest draftsman of the Impressionist line, if that's the way to put it. But once you get to an attempt to not use idealization and all those sorts of things, or make up your own figures in your head, painting from life, this guy is beyond astonishing. I mean, he's just got a brilliant sense of form. He's got a fantastic sense of shape, and a beautiful relational eye, where he's drawing one side to the other and getting all these players into each other. Just beautiful in every possible way, right? And he's also got this thing, which you keep seeing showing up occasionally. This is not a late piece. But you keep seeing these things showing up in his work where he actually is obviously saying something just else. And he's getting impressionist pleasure out of, yeah, lost and found. You might as well call it that. All right, that's not Paxton. Now here's Paxton again. Here's a Paxton head. You can see it from miles away, right? You see these three are Boston School heads, Benson, Tarbell, and DeCamp. None of these look like that, do they? They're very different in their orientation. This is all about line. This is all about shape. It's all about modeling, even, you might argue, from rather knowledge, right, rather than sight. Now, it doesn't mean the guy didn't have eyes and couldn't see and all those things, just like Ang. He's got a good eye. He said about himself, and I don't think he's wrong, he said, I'm not a great draftsman, but I can draw as accurately as anybody. And I think that's probably true. But he's a line guy. He's an outline guy, as a matter of fact. These guys are drawing from effects. And again, you'll see lost and found, just like I showed you in that Degas. You'll see areas like this that are rather, I would say, passionately lost. They're lost with delight, and then the play of the found areas with their turn. All these things are being set up simultaneously in this kind of drawing. It's not outline into noodling, right? That is not the same model. So it's very important that you don't confuse them. This is the academic model. This is the Impressionist model. Here again, you could see lost and found like crazy. It's the big general impression. Now these guys, by the way, this one it's almost front lit, right? So if anybody, all these Ang or Paxton were doing this, it probably wouldn't look this way, would it? But these guys have the advantage of being able to draw in something far less than front light. By the way, there could be another reason why Paxton, if he actually was a sight sizer, drew in front light. But you guys know that you're so limited. But you're not limited in any way once you're an impressionist and learn how to see visually and use your eyes to draw, as they describe Velasquez, using your eyes to draw rather than your measurements. All right, rather than your stick measurements, mechanical measurements. So here we go. Here's Paxton. I mean, so here's Paxton, this really lovely nude. I always like this thing. It appears to be like on a gold leaf background. She's standing in front of a gold leaf and shimmering like crazy. I mean, it's really, really a delightful thing. But what I'm here to show you about this, first of all, every little thing about this is drawn. Every little thing around here is drawn. I'm showing you close-ups. Look at this. Everything is drawn around. This thing is so drawn around that it looks like a Bouguereau. The famous Bouguereau outline, right, where everything is just noodling. Once that thing is fixed there, everything is just noodling. And he's gone to the trouble of drawing a line that's so odd. Nothing an Impressionist would ever do. This is a lost edge. So the Impressionist mind wouldn't be interested in forcing a line into a situation like that. That's Ang, that's Bouguereau, that's academic, right? No denying it, right? This guy didn't. This is DeCamp. He didn't put a line in here. He didn't put a line in down here to differentiate anything. But so why did this guy need to do it? But he's operating from outline into whatever. He needs his outline. That's his mother's milk. So, and here's DeCamp. I mean, here's Tarbell. These nudes are not that frequent in the Boston School repertoire. So I had to do some digging to find these things. But this thing, see this reading edge here. This is very characteristic of the orientation of these guys. This edge and this edge. These guys are setup points. This edge down here. These are setup points in this way of drawing. The object is not the setup point. You cannot see this thing as having been drawn as an object. Paxton is an object all day. Everything he does, he's drawing objects. Just telling you so you know the difference, okay? And by the way, how is drawing objects Impressionism? So is it just having the right color on an object that makes it an impression, that makes it a visual impression? Or is the ocular, the whole science of seeing, having its own methodology, isn't that actually what Impressionism is? It's literally a different method, right? By the way, if he were an Impressionist, would he not be painting? If he was following the methods of Monet, wouldn't he be painted by spots? I've never seen anything by him that suggests he paints by spots. By the way, I learned some things about broken color from Paxton, so don't misunderstand me when I say that. I'm not being small-minded about this. But he does not start with a field of broken color and find the drawing later. It's all about getting the drawing set up, and as I'll show you. So here's Paxton's start. In this start here, it's very evident, and I think it's true also of Sorolla, that he has drawn around objects with a charcoal or something like that. He's put a line around, not necessarily a hard one, but a pretty specific one that actually is a continuous, not continuous, I shouldn't say that, but it's a specific line that goes around things. And I say that because he's drawn things that no Impressionist in the Boston School would be drawing around. And I didn't actually, well, I'll show you. You can see it over here in these two, the blue cup studies. This is a close-up of the still life portion. And you can see that he didn't draw around things and then lose things. He didn't even use things. Now over here it suggests that he drew around both sides, but this is a thumbnail. But when you see the way he's approaching this, he's not drawing around anything, and he's not saving anything for whatever. He's just drawing the shapes of the darks, the shapes of the light. That's a different way of thinking, okay? So down here you gets that sense that he's drawing the arm and all these things. Even when they don't read well, he's actually literally drawing objects. And he draws each one of these separate things, and they look like things. And there's no sense of lostness in any of this stuff, which is very characteristic, uniquely, you might argue, characteristic of Boston School method, okay? Again, if Gamel's talking about the Boston School, and he did say something else, in other words, we know the Boston School is Tarbell and Benson. He knows that. He says that. But now he's actually telling you to go look for your model to Paxton. Well, so Gamel firmly believes that the academic into color or the Impressionist stuff back into the academic mold, new, what do they call it? New wine and old wineskins is the ideal model. So, and I'm just showing another one here. This is Paxton on the left, and these two paintings on the right are Sally, is it Sally DeCamp? This is at Worcester, beautiful. If you ever get a chance to go to the museum in Worcester, it's worth your time. And this is a really, really nice high moment in your visit. But again, you're seeing this sense. Like here's an example. See the lostness here, the sheer marvelous lostness. He's gotten pleasure out of the lostness. He wasn't just losing it to be a good boy or some edge or something. And here too, he's actually, the mystery of this thing is all about getting all this stuff associated, and getting the darks all fully sweeping in and out of each other, right? And the light's doing the same kinds of things. We have this sweet lostness right in through here. You don't get the sense in either of these pictures that he's drawing objects, do you? In this picture, you do, actually. And in a spot like this, where you would have had that great pleasure of lostness, if you were a Boston School guy, and the mystery, which you probably would have kept, even the darks all going through here, having this marvelous unity, he just made things right. He made cast shadows right. I'm telling you, he's doing the optics one rather than the appearance one model. So it's different, right? And as again, Ang and all those guys who were doing that kind of stuff were good at it, but they hadn't found this other model yet. The lost and found, the reading. Look at the beauty of this edge right here. I mean, look at the life just in this edge. It looks just a study. But he's not into drawing up the inside of the eyeballs and things like that, right? He's far more into the beauty of this edge. It's the reading edge. Look at the variations and beauty and the run down through this. This is astounding stuff. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And so it's not in the details of the objects, like on the eyes and all these things. It's in this significant silhouetting. It's where the silhouette happens, in the significant silhouettes where these guys find beauty. It's a little different model, a significantly different model from getting the sort of the shape right and not finding visual beauty. So not picking on Paxton. I love this picture, or I wouldn't have used it. Now, here's another example of the start. This is a Benson, this is a Tarbell nude here. A lot of skin here. And this is a Paxton. I want to tell you it was in the studio in one of Gamel's studios when I was a student. But this again gives you the idea of how different it is. There's no sense of lostness in this picture in any magical sense at all. This thing is full of lostness and mystery. Now, again, I'll tell you, he's painting front light. This guy's painting somewhat, he's in a slightly different light, but he's casting shadows on his model. Uh, this actually is pretty forward light, pretty front light. But you see the difference in their orientation. There isn't any sense of atmosphere in this picture at all, right? Now, it's not that these guys are looking for it. It goes with the territory. If you use their method, you're going to immediately, also among all the other things you're going to get atmosphere. It's one of the marvelous things about the Boston School method, painting in the visual order, getting the strong players fully articulated and allowing the unities of the minor players to maintain. And it gives you this great sense of unity, which they're loath to let go of, right? Well, this kind of a painter is loath to let go of objects, for the sake of that other thing, right? So that's Paxton, and again, it's a different model. That's a start, slightly different start from the one we saw previously, and a little more advanced, but not a whole lot. In fact, the other one's got a lot more beauty in it in the abstract sense than this one does, or did if it's the same one as the one I saw. Uh, doesn't mean he's not doing things that look true and good, and he's having some fun with gesture and all these other things. But I'm just simply saying these are two different worlds. And for Gamble to send you to understand Impressionism to Paxton would be a mistake. Unless you just mean, and frequently, by the way, Paxton's color. And Paxton's color is frequently as good as anybody's color in the Boston School, period, okay? And the sense of light is too. But his method of operating and the emphasis on the powering up, the order visual, is with the other guys. Here again, that sense of lost and found. So here's a Paxton. You can see that you can find every object. Really, you can see your way around every object. He's careful. He's gotten his joy out of articulating every object for your pleasure. In the same way here, this is out of a painting at the Corcoran. I guess it's the National Gallery. But the same thing. You can see the objects per se. Now this object is rather interesting because it's very like this one. And here you have this incredible sense of atmosphere, of magic in the atmosphere, right? And it's this whole thing about lost and found, and it's not a trick. It's actually the order in which they paint, and they keep getting this pleasure, this fun out of it. And again, even these flowers here, you can't necessarily settle in and like one of these flowers, but you can love the unity of the whole, which is that big discussion that Velázquez is about, right? The seeing of the whole. Even by the way, Sir Joshua Reynolds says the genius lies in seeing the thing as a whole. And if he meant that thing as a whole, that would be true. But if you're talking about this thing as a whole, you're a Boston School impressionist, or just in general, you're an appearance impressionist, right? You're not into an object impressionist, if there is such a thing. All right. So then here's a couple interiors where you can again see the object orientation of Paxton. These are very nice. He has again, I'm telling you, he has beautiful color and light. But you can see it's not the same thing. And by the way, his model by this time had become Vermeer. These guys are moving far away from both, from that model. They're still closer to Velázquez, that whole idea of painting from lost and found. That wasn't Vermeer. Vermeer had a wonderful sense of edges. It was just astonishing, great sense of form, beautiful light. He really did manage to find a way to see the truth of light, color of light. And the sense of light, the sort of like the orderliness of it is so like some of those way long before that, some of the work of Da Vinci, as he's studying the movement of light across form. So, but this is a different model. This is actually the Velázquez model. This feels like the Vermeer model. This feels like the Velázquez model. That's a big difference, isn't it? And the methods go with it. The methods are different. As I said, otherwise you'd find considerably more lostness. Even if you push a painting through like this, Gamble's word is push it through. It means push it through and cross all the T's and dot all the I's of the real. So you have so everything is there looking real. He probably would denounce me for saying it quite that way, but so now again, we're getting to the last ones. Here's Paxton. You can tell it's a different model from this, right? This is Tarbell. This is Joseph de Camp. Again, even doing a portrait. And by the way, both these guys have done some pretty mundane portraits. They're almost as mundane as this one. But all the portraits I've seen by de Camp, by Paxton, are rather in this kind of mold. It's really the shape and the modeling up of the shape, rather like an Ang. And you can see the model here. And remember, I showed you the one. I should have showed it here again by Benson, where this whole sense of lost and found, the mystery, visual order is all there. This guy's just an outline guy and noodling up inside the outline. Well, this is different. And this is all, again, the order of the edges, significant order of, the order of significance, the things in their order, in their order of significance. So in this little passage here, you can see that this reads better than this over here, and those are well expressed right from the beginning. Right from the beginning. That's huge stuff for these guys. So again, different, right? Entirely different looks. There's something so fluid about these two, so natural. And that's one of those takeaways when you look at Ang. If you want that look, that hard look, and I actually asked Camel once, I said, I was just talking about, I think it was Mantegna, and I said, man, his work, I like his work, but it's so hard. And Gamble said, what's wrong with hard? So whatever, right? But Paxton's has that thing going on. He softens up the form and all that sort of stuff, but it still has this other look where there's no sense of, if some people call it dither, there's no sense of the light play that affects as it affects the form. I mean, yes, the modeling is correct and all that sort of stuff, but he's actually continuously modeling the object. And this guy is just making the patterns of the lights and the movement of color and the play of edges, and he's getting a different package. He's getting considerably a greater package than the Paxton one gives you. And for that reason, by the way, I would simply say to Gamble that I think it's a better model for the person trying to reinvent, to rediscover the turn of the century before last. So here they are outdoors. Again, you're looking at this one by Paxton, where these look like toy boats. This looks like object painting 101, right? The face, the hair, the boats, the other boats. I mean, everything feels like it's a series of objects. This one is as much so. This one actually feels a little bit, in a very good way, like a Sorolla. And I like all these guys, and I like these pictures, by the way. So I'm not doing anything to critique them. I'm telling you when you work differently, when you work in that object-oriented way, you get a different, less, what shall we call it? Less atmospheric unity. Just inevitably, you get less atmospheric unity. So this is, as you know, Benson. I've shown it to you so many times, and Benson's daughters again. And I wonder if that's the family growing up. Fascinating. When you think about that, isn't it? Yeah. So again, there's no sense of objects here. There's a sense of the total package of the impression, right? And if you're talking about impressionism, you're not talking about the impression, but you're in fact talking about the impressions the objects made rather than the visual impression, the total package visual impression. And we're talking about different animals, right? And again, this has that feeling of being nicely drawn in a certain way. It sort of has that tidiness that sort of annoys me about some of Gamble's offspring, none of which are alive today. Anyway, finally, I think this is the last one. We have two still lifes by Paxton across from each other here. And what you're seeing that I want you to look at here, first of all, you're seeing, I mentioned before talking to you, that you're seeing a brick count. There's no such thing that's ever going to go on. I mean, he may have something like a fence post count, but look at those things are pretty seriously there. Yeah, and the tree branches are there, all those things. But this idea of counting leaves, this idea that you're counting petals, I mean, this whole thing, look at these, this is just very object-oriented. There's no sense, he is not working from the mystery of light and shadow at all. He's not working from the Impressionist vision at all. He's working from the academic vision and trying to glue Impressionist color onto it. And the general Impressionist isn't that bad. I mean, it's actually pretty good. This one too. Although it has that feeling of being local color. The trees, I've seen this one in person, the trees look like local color and somewhat purplish like this. But again, the count, like counting leaves. I mean, who does that? So I showed you the bunker, who was Paxton's early teacher. I don't even think in his earliest stuff he was counting leaves. Even in the Medfield fields, where it looks like there's a zillion leaves, they're just flecks, right? He never really does this thing where it looks like he's actually making leaves. In some cases, he makes them look like actual leaves. You can actually decide what kind of tree that is. And by the way, if you're making your marks, there should be enough data in your marks for that to be visible, but it isn't because you looked and saw what kind of tree it was or what each leaf shape was. So this is considerably more like the Velasquez model, the landscapes I've showed you, and they're so tawdry looking, I don't want to show them now. And so is this, uh, where we're talking about very different, again, very different ways of thinking. Okay? So I just want you to know that we're talking about something that different. And there are other ways in which they're different that I'm not going to talk about anymore today. But so that's been fairly long, but it could have been worse. All right, good. I hope you enjoy that and get something out of it. Do speak to me if you want me to go off in different directions. It's your questions that make me go there. So thank you very much. See you next time.